Lockwood, and with me is celebrity undercover guest Pearl Lockwood.
Hi, everybody.
Today is a special college night fact checked edition, meaning that schools in our neighborhood and around the country are having these college nights where they talk parents through the process of applying to college and of applying for financial aid. So, last night in our district, Pearl went to our college. Was it college planning night, or what do they call it?
Financial aid night.
Okay. So what we're going to talk about is what she learned, what she saw. Turn the volume off on that, by the way, if that goes off, because we're also checking your comments. I wanted to start off, though, by just, I guess, addressing some of the negative comments that we've gotten recently from guidance counselors. And the point is that we're trying to make here is not that all guidance counselors are terrible. In fact, and we've said this before, we happen to really, really like our son's guidance counselor. Actually, two of our sons, they have the same one, the same guidance counselor. And factually speaking, the ratio of student to guidance counselor nationally is like 474 to 1. And in New York, it's 400 to 1. So we're not saying by any means that guidance counselors can handle all this stuff that we're about to talk to you about. But by the same token, most high schools will reach out to local college financial aid people, or in our case, it's usually, where was the person from last night? New York Tech?
New York Institute of Technology.
Right. So it's usually someone from NYIT or Adelphi or Post or Hofstra, right, who couldn't be there last night because of the presidential debate. They usually come and talk about financial aid. We've heard about this over and over again. We've never actually given that talk at our district, although we're speaking later, I think next month, at Herrick's and Jericho and a few other places. So what we want to do is Pearl's going to debrief you. I'm going to interview her on some of the things that she heard that were not quite accurate, some of the omissions, which in a nutshell give parents bad information and can sabotage their ability to get every last dollar that they should otherwise get.
Well, the discussion, in fact, does not focus on that last thing you just said in any way. How you can optimize your financial aid chances completely legally and ethically. It's just like if someone were holding a tax return and said, this is where your name goes.
Okay.
This is these 5 items determine whether you're a citizen of the United States. Check one box, etc.
All right, so check us out on see if the feed is going okay, because we're kind of frozen here on my monitor.
Hi, Larry.
Okay, so please like, comment, and share. Please let us know that that you're on, and say hi. And again, if you have any questions, we're going to do our best to answer them. And then we have another event coming up Thursday night. So, all right, so talk about, I know you made a list here. Congratulations on prepping today. And so I see a few things on your list that I guess either were not addressed or were addressed incompletely. So is this in order?
Right.
Do you want to start with deadlines?
It's not even necessarily in order. It was just, this was the first time I had gone to a financial aid night as a consumer, as a parent of a college-bound teen who is applying for college. Our 12th grader is in that boat right now, and so I went in really to see could I stand to learn something that I did not know about this process, or just to see, knowing what I know and comparing it to what information would be presented. So the first thing I was struck by, because this was a representative from a local university, she did a fine job basically describing, that there's a FAFSA and these are the basic elements of a FAFSA, and very general things. For example,
that's good.
Yeah, that was a good thing.
Okay.
Her school, where this representative works at, is a school that only requires the FAFSA. So she was definitely much more familiar with aspects about the FAFSA and did not go into almost to a detriment where it could really lead people in confusing directions. Enough about the CSS profile because it's not something that she, within her job capacity, needs to be familiar with. Her school doesn't take it, require it, they don't analyze it, they don't look at it, period.
All right, so just to back up, in the financial aid process, there are 4,000 colleges. They each require the federal form, the FAFSA, which Pearl just mentioned,
Right.
free application for federal student aid.
Okay.
Then another 260 or 270 or so colleges, in addition to the FAFSA, and many of those colleges happen to be colleges that kids in our district and most likely in your district, if you're watching,
Right.
also require in addition to the FAFSA. So what Pearl is saying is that this person had a decent handle on probably better than decent handle on FAFSA requirements, but when it came to any type of advice about the CSS profile, that's where she fell short.
Yes, and not just there, but let me just take them one by
Okay.
one. So specifically, in this regard, she had suggested, let's say, that there's the FAFSA, which every school takes and requires if you're seeking aid, and then there's an alternate form or another form. It almost sounded in certain instances she was saying there was like a choice, either the FAFSA or the CSS profile. Folks, it doesn't work like that. There are about
Well, there is a choice.
Okay, there's always a choice. If you're seeking aid consideration, there's not a choice. This is a prerequisite.
If you want money, you have to play by their rules.
Their rules, okay? So
But if you don't want it, it's your choice.
That's a good starting piece of advice, which will not be the only time I'm giving it. If you want information about the school, you should check the school's website for important information, like what forms does this school that my child or I am interested in attending, what forms does it take? Does it require the FAFSA and the CSS profile, or just the FAFSA?
Or other forms.
Or other forms. Does it have an institutional form of its own? And what are the deadlines for these things? Okay, that brings me to point number 2. So just to back up, there isn't a choice. There's the FAFSA. If you're seeking aid, you apply to you submit the FAFSA to all schools that you are seeking aid consideration from. About 270 odd schools also require this additional form called the CSS profile. So at the schools that you're applying to that require both forms, that school is also going to see all the same information on the FAFSA as the CSS profile, and that same school is going to consider everything in both. Okay, moving along.
Move along.
So there's not a choice. It
What are
depends
the
on the
deadlines?
school. Okay, deadline issue. This was completely glossed over,
Clear it
and
out.
this is
Come on.
important.
We have a half-hour show.
Okay. Depending on how the applicant is applying to that school for admission, whether it's early decision, early action, regular decision, rolling admissions, that determines that student's priority financial aid deadline. So, if let's say someone is applying to Boston College, which is a school that requires both the FAFSA and the CSS profile, and if that student is applying early action, then that student would need to check BC's, Boston College's website, to see when the priority financial aid deadline is for early admission. If they're applying regular and abide by it and get that financial aid form in before it. These are deadlines that are different than the application for admissions deadline. Don't confuse the two. And don't confuse the difference between early admission and regular admission. Those deadlines are different. Of course, you're not going to pay a penalty for submitting it sooner rather than later.
Did she not talk about that?
She did not. She could not answer when the CSS profile was due in general because it was acknowledged that it was not a form she was as keen on, knew as well. And then, but no, she didn't. All she needed to say was, go on to the school's website, and depending on how you're applying to the school will determine when your priority financial aid deadline is. Period. End of story.
All right.
Wasn't said.
That was a little ranty. If you're just joining us, this is College Talk Tuesday. We're fact-checking last night's college night in our district, but we're really fact-checking every district's college night. And I've heard some crazy things recently. one thing I want to mention, but please like, comment, and share. Give Per a little shout out for going undercover last night. I think she was in like a Groucho Marx type of.
That was me.
If any of you are in our district and you saw Groucho Marx last night, it really wasn't him, but your eyes weren't deceiving you. It was Pearl. So I was talking to a client just yesterday who goes to a parochial school, a local parochial school, really, really hard, top-notch school. And what she said was that her college night started off with a video that was made in 1993 that actually appeared on the video, and it spent a lot of time instructing parents and kids how to mail in their college applications. And the upshot of the the audience's reaction were, I think evidenced by them shouting things like, "This is what we pay $11,000 for," and like a lot of hate and frustration. So I think you told me last night that you felt like, I don't know if you're reading into it too much, but you felt like a lot of parents were walking out of there more confused than when they walked in. And I don't blame them. I don't know if that's the case or not.
No, it wasn't. It
Okay.
was absolutely the case. They left like scratching their heads like, now I'm really confused.
Okay. So again, this is not just so you know, we're not bashing our particular district. We're not bashing guidance counselors either, and this is not a plea to hire us.
No.
It's not. We just want to get the information out to you, and then you can decide, if you can handle it on your own or not.
No,
It's
and
totally up to you.
I'd love to just clarify for 1 minute, and I've said it before, but I do feel we owe it to the guidance counselors, really, and we've heard this, what I'm about to say, universally, the gripes against guidance counselors, it's misplaced, and I want to explain why. Because guidance counselors, you do a great job at what you're trained to do. And unfortunately, and this is what I had a unique experience last year to speak to many parents about their expectations of their guidance counselor. And
Well, explain that.
well, I was asked to be on a committee reviewing a guidance department, and in that committee, in that experience, I had to speak to many parents about what their expectations were, and specifically, when they're in high school and in the college planning, what their expectations were and what they were disappointed, what they wanted improvement in, and what I learned in this exercise and in this situation completely met with what I have heard year after year after year from all of our clients who source from all over the country and from fantastic Catholic private schools, regular private schools, and terrific
Jewish?
A+,
Muslim, which is how you
Public-
pronounce it, by the way,
public
according
schools.
to what I saw
And
in the
the
debate.
sentiment is the same.
Come
The
on.
sentiment is the same,
Sorry.
which is that what they expect from guidance counselors and what guidance counselors are trained and ably do are two totally different things.
So it's
That's the
your
problem.
fault if you're not happy with your guidance counselor. That's the message.
Well, there's
In a way.
there's a bigger problem that should get solved, or there's an outcry for it to get solved. Whether this particular district is going to do anything or any other, that remains to be seen.
Let me ask you this.
Yes.
So what happened to that committee?
Well, it actually got disbanded because, and again, we are acknowledging this sensitivity because this is
Don't
also
touch
why
one
I
air.
believe that this, and there were such sensitivities echoed about the guidance counselors, about that they were being held under any kind of scrutiny, that they were being reviewed.
Right.
And
So I think what you're saying, I'm sorry, because I want to keep this moving, but I think what you're saying is you see both sides.
I absolutely
Because it's
do.
not purely that guidance counselors stink, but
No,
they
it
could
isn't.
do a better job. It's really the administrations who could do a better job choosing the right people to
Let's
give
take
us
everybody
to,
down.
No, to give the right information out and recognizing
What the
that they're
community
not
wants
doing that.
and
yeah.
what their community wants. These communities of parents of college-bound teens need more information
Okay.
when they're
so
making
enough. So let's
Okay.
give them more of the information,
Okay, more
and
of the
while you're
info.
listening, again, please share this. Please like, comment, let us know that you're watching.
Okay.
Trying to scroll around on Facebook. You are now going to talk about. There's a bunch of things to talk
Yes.
about. Primary residence home value, business value for business owners,
Okay.
divorced considerations for divorced peoples. These were all sort of fumbled in one way, shape, or form last night. Correct?
Yes.
All right. So
some
rattle
of
them
it.
off.
Okay, so on the this was covered well. On the FAFSA, if you are a self-employed business owner and you own a company and employ fewer than 100 employees, then the federal rules say,
FAFSA.
the FAFSA says you should put the value at 0.
And
okay?
the
said-
financial aid person told you that, right? That was
she
correct.
actually said it has, you don't put a value.
Okay, so you wouldn't be able
I'm
to
not
submit
quibbling.
the FAFSA.
Correct.
So
You
it's
actually,
0.
and I understand the difficulty, and I run into it time and time again when I'm putting the value at 0, and then the self-employed business owner says to me, but it feels dishonest. It's not, and
Honest, schmonest. No, kidding.
there
It's financial aid rules.
Yes, but it's financial aid rules is right.
Two different things.
This is-
There's reality and there's financial aid rules, and we live in the world of financial
Correct.
aid rules. Even though we, in our when we're out of our day job, we live in reality also.
Yes.
So what about the rest of the story? What about colleges that take the CSS profile?
So-
how'd that come up, and how did she respond, and what's
Okay.
the right answer?
So for the CSS profile, the same question is asked, and it goes into a few additional questions. And she sort of said that that there should be some different treatment on the CSS profile than there was on the FAFSA. That's not true. In fact, these forms, with respect to the questions that are exactly the same, the answers should be consistent. The difference is the CSS profile asks a few additional questions about your business other than the one question the FAFSA asks, which is, tell us the value of your business. And that's where the rule comes in, where if you're a self-employed business owner with fewer than 100 employees, the value for the purpose of this form is really what it also is saying parenthetically, is 0. Okay. The few other additional questions that the CSS profile asks about your business is when you started the business, what type of tax return the business files, what your gross receipts for the business, and let me just point one thing out. It's actually only what percentage of the business that you own is what you're supposed to put in. So if you only own 50% of a business, then the gross receipts that you report on the CSS profile with respect to this business should only be half of the gross receipts of that business.
So let's say you own half the business and the business has $1 million in gross receipts. What should you put?
$500,000.
Nailed that.
Thanks. I'm pretty good at math.
You are good at math. I just want to say hi to Noreen Alvarez, Robert
Hi.
Shevlin, and Larry Cohen. Thank you for liking us. Anyone else who's out there, please like and comment, and we'll take your questions once Pearl gets done ranting. So anything else on business value before we talk about divorced families, and did you really cover primary residence yet?
No, I didn't really.
Okay.
But the few other questions about business value are, well, they ask about the value, they ask how many employees you have, they ask if other family members are employed by this business, and ask you for a little bit more of a description if that is the case. And that's about it on the CSS profile. Okay.
Gabrielle Collins just joined us. So if
Hi,
Gabrielle,
Gabrielle.
Noreen, and Robert, any of you guys have specific questions, we're going to
Please
try to
ask.
get to them
Sure.
in the next 10 minutes. But she's got a lot more material, so we can't promise it. But just post them whenever you can. Okay. Go.
Another thing about divorced families or separated families. She correctly stated that if the school requires only the FAFSA, the parent with whom the child resides with more than 50% of the time is considered the custodial parent for the purposes of which parent's information do we use. So it would be the custodial parent, the parent with whom the child resides with 50% or more of the time, whose financial information only and exclusively is to be used on the FAFSA. Yes, that was all correctly stated. As for the CSS profile, which many schools will also require, there is a couple of line items about the non-custodial parent that will be asked, specifically name, address, email, when the year of divorce.
I know I'm interrupting you all the time. How did this come up last night? Like explain.
Well, there was
what was the question?
There was a divorced mother who raised her hand and wanted more information about divorce situations and when is the other parent's information used, and when does that come up? And
so the person last night addressed the FAFSA only?
she addressed the FAFSA completely correctly
Right.
only, and there was just an abyss kind of left off with the CSS. So I just wanted to share two sentences that I would have added. So within the CSS profile itself, it will ask just a few completely benign questions about the non-custodial parent. Now, of the schools requiring the CSS profile, only a subset of those schools, so not all schools that require the CSS profile, also require this additional form, which is called the non-custodial parent profile. That subset of schools, which
May I give some numbers?
Sure.
What's with the touching? Okay.
I love you.
Thanks. So, not public. Please don't. Okay. So, again, 260, 270 colleges, because people are coming in and out, so I just want to make sure they understand what we're talking about. So, 260, 270 colleges require a form called the CSS profile, which is twice as long as the FAFSA. It's 10 times as complex in terms of what the disclosure requirements are. And if you are applying to a school that requires this form, you need to make sure that you do both forms. It's not an either or. And you need to make sure that the answers are consistent and all that. Out of that 260, 270 or whatever, I would guess roughly a third of those schools, maybe it's a little bit more because this changes. We've seen it change.
And it does change from year to year what each school requires. We've seen schools that one year can be a FAFSA only school, and then the next year, now they're requiring both.
Thank you for muddying what I was saying.
Sorry?
Pearl, you always do this.
Interrupting elbow.
Who's interrupting whom?
Whatever, I just wanted to use it.
Okay. As long as there's no physical contact, I don't want to have a black eye. So roughly a third of the 260 or 270 colleges require this non-custodial parent profile. And that also can change from year to year. I remember George Washington University did not require it up until I think 2 years ago. Then all of a sudden you were more gleeful about it. You're like, oh, they require the CSS. You were like very happy about it because she gets very geeky about financial aid forms. But that's just endearing. I think that's positive.
Thank you.
And the point is that this person probably had no idea of this, and the advice that she gave to the mom who was asking this and to every other divorced family, which is a lot of people, was incomplete. And what could happen is you could file for financial aid thinking you did everything correctly, and later learn out that because you didn't fill out the non-custodial parent profile, then you may not get the money that you deserve because the college may just reject the application as incomplete.
Exactly.
Okay. What else?
Okay, moving along. Okay, here was another thing. So there's a certain amount, there's a set amount of questions.
This is a good one.
that are asked on the CSS profile. Then there is a last section of the CSS profile, which is called Supplemental Questions section. That section of the CSS profile is reserved for specific schools, like the schools that you are applying to, if they have additional questions that go beyond the four corners, if you will, of the CSS profile.
Nice. And nice hand gestures today, by the way.
Thanks.
If you like Pearl's hand gestures, please show a little love or whatever. We're just
like
being,
it, sad it.
we're just. Well, I appreciate that. I don't know what the right emoticon would be or emoji. Hello to Marty Wyatt. Also, thank you for joining us.
Marty.
Okay, so supplemental questions.
Some
Some colleges require additional questions on the CSS profile.
Right. They have the opportunity, each college has the opportunity to ask its own additional questions, and you can actually look and see when you get into your supplemental questions section, you can actually see which schools are specifically asking those questions, and it is only those schools that are going to get the answers to those questions.
So before you describe some supplemental questions, describe how this came up at College Financial Aid Night and fact check it, and then describe the reality.
Okay.
Go.
So number one, I'll go with the more benign into the more nefarious.
Nice.
So
nice vocabulary word.
Thanks. So the first thing she had intimated was that the information about your automobiles was a universal question on the CSS profile.
Did anyone ask this? How did it come up?
No. She just said they're going to ask, it asks questions about your cars. And okay, so another person had asked the following question, said, if I have $10,000 worth of credit card debt.
Wait, hold on a second. Just back up. So she said that the CSS profile looks at your cars.
Yes.
And in reality, what should she have said?
She should have said, no, it is not asked on the CSS profile main form. However, it can be asked in the supplemental question section by a particular school that is asking that question, which you're applying to.
So is this fair to say that for the most part, most colleges don't care what car you drive?
Correct. That is true.
What schools do, by the way? Do you remember?
Well, I
you on the
have
spot?
noticed a correlation between sometimes the more generous and the more competitive a school is with the more detailed, nosy questions they are asking in the supplemental question section.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong, I
That's
think
the
the
trend.
theory behind that is that if you were a college and someone was asking you for money, you would want to not only review their income and other types of things, but if they were driving an S-Class Mercedes and racking up credit card debt on vacations, you may think twice about whether they really need your money. Maybe there's more money there and they're making choices. And maybe as a college, you wouldn't feel like they should be giving you. You should be giving that money out to them and helping them.
Exactly.
Enabling.
And the real question that was trying to be asked that wasn't quite flat out addressed by the financial aid officer was is credit card debt, are my expenses listed anywhere? Because what if I have credit card debt, and what if I have an expensive house, and what if this, what if that, okay. So she went over, no problem. Yes, the value of your primary residence, it should not be anywhere reported on the FAFSA. That is true.
On the FAFSA.
On the FAFSA only. On the CSS profile, they are asking you about information specifically about your primary residence, and they want to know the current value of your home, when you purchased your home, how much did you purchase it for, how much do you have mortgaged against it now in a first mortgage, how about a second mortgage, how about a home equity line.
So what about the credit card issue?
So the credit card issue is, so she answered it correctly, and she said, do they ask about your credit card expenses? And she said, no, it's not factored in. Well, it isn't, except, and then I'll explain the second way it was brought up and not treated properly. But the supplemental questions section often will have a question. Please tell us numerically how much credit card debt or installment or revolving credit card debt you have. And then if you answer anything but nothing, then you are to provide a detailed explanation of what? We want to know about your cars. We want to know about your credit cards. We want to know about anything. So
and again, that's a supplemental question. Most colleges don't ask that, right?
But some do. So, okay. So then the second, somebody else had asked, well, so if I have $10,000 in credit card debt and I pay that $10,000 is
with my cash.
Will that help my financial aid eligibility? And the advisor said no.
Why?
Because what she meant, I'll tell you
Okay.
why she said no. She was wrong. She said no, but she meant your expenses, your credit card debt is irrelevant on the FAFSA.
Okay.
And, that's what she was answering no to.
As opposed to
in any way, and this is the big problem, let's say, with having just a representative from a school, the business, remember, folks. Okay.
Just answer the question, please. Or take the fifth.
That's like really trendy lately.
I know.
Have you noticed?
Yeah.
Okay, I digress.
So if you have $10,000 in cash and you pay off your credit card bills, what you're doing is reducing the cash that could be penalized by the financial aid formula.
Exactly.
I guess that's the right answer.
Oh my God! And I have one other thing I just remembered that was huge. Yes, that is the correct answer. So you're reducing.
Although $10,000, you're penalized at like $560.
Well, that was the
So-
other thing that was not gone
Oh.
over last night. Now I'm thinking of two things.
But if it was $100,000 and you paid off something, you'd be saving 5.64% on that, or $5,600.
Right.
So so it may not really matter. Maybe de minimis. It really may not. I don't think she meant that. I'm guessing, but it really may not matter that much to pay $10,000.
She
but
didn't mean de minimis
Okay,
at all. She
okay.
meant that your credit card expenses do not count.
I
on
was just
these
trying
forms.
to
Give
stick
the
up for
benefit
her.
of the doubt,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
No, and
Can we all get along?
So once it was brought
Financial aid
up,
officer lives matter, Pearl.
once it was then pointed out, but doesn't that reduce your assets, your parent assets, by $10,000 if you take care of that credit card bill, and therefore you have potentially greater financial aid eligibility? Yes. And then she explained, parents get, and she mentioned the asset threshold amount.
Ooh, you tell me about that.
I know. And she may be a little bit dated in the asset threshold allowance
I
amount
see
that
where you're
she
going
was
with this.
describing because
Okay.
there unfortunately, all right, so let me just explain what it is, and then I'll explain what's been happening to
What
it.
did she say about it? How does that even come up?
Okay, so an asset threshold
Don't you
allowance
feel like this
amount,
is like minutia? This is like. I mean,
but it's important minutia.
No. I know. Well, okay, that is not minutia. I just feel like there's a lot of like digging into stuff that misses the big picture. But by her, I guess.
Well,
Never you.
she
No.
is more like, this is how, this is the time.
Hey.
This is the time, not how do you build the clock
Right. Okay.
so that, that's not a great example, but basically,
It's the opposite. She's
know-
telling you how to build the clock. All right, so go through
All right, anyhow.
So what she say? How does this even come up? So
Okay.
just
So
the
because-
threshold allowance is a certain amount of money that does not get penalized, and everything above that does get penalized.
Okay.
And she had that number a lot higher.
she
than,
said $50,000.
Well, it was
Woo!
50,000.
Yeah, but it hasn't been in years, and I
Right.
haven't seen it in years. And each year, that asset threshold allowance amount is being lowered every single year. I got a table a couple of years ago, and I was like, oh my
It's
god, oh
every
my
year,
god, oh my
yeah.
god. It's like in the teens now. Depends, obviously, if you're single, you're married. This is where your metrics matter in terms of, she had touched on, older parents get a break.
So let
because
me
da-da-da.
let me go back to 35,000 foot view. So just not to be political
No,
about
it's true.
this, but the deal with the dropping of the allowance basically means that more of your savings
It's penalized.
I would have said penalized, but I grew up in Boston. Anyway, more of your savings is subject to penalty. You're punished for having more savings, and that has been a sleeper, silent tax.
Yep.
In effect, there's an assault on the middle class that never gets reported in the in the newspapers, probably because it's so esoteric and hard to explain. But basically, it used to be for and we're just using round numbers. If you had a certain amount of money, you're a certain age, you're sending your kids to college. The first $50,000, which doesn't sound like a lot compared to college costs, but your first $50,000 was not penalized in any way, shape, or form. And every dollar above that, 5.64%.
Right.
All that's happened since then, every year, is that college costs have gone up, and that protection has gone down.
Right.
So it costs more, and you have to pay more of what you have saved, thanks to the current administration. Yeah.
That's
so
not so political.
right. Well,
Hey.
it's factual.
And it's the season.
Fact check that.
'Tis the season.
Political season or
Yes.
financial aid season or both?
Both.
Interesting confluence.
Hmm.
Okay, so if you're just joining us, and I saw, who did I see? I saw Mark Fisher. Come on. Hello, Mark. And I see, Roy Breitenbach. Good. And, all right, cool. Actually, well, I'm going to keep that silent. I was going to make a comment that may have revealed the confidence. So I'm not going to do that.
Good
So-
exercising of judgment.
Yeah. Yes, I have a great temperament to be doing this broadcast.
You do.
Although I'm not necessarily, sometimes I'm described as lacking a filter.
No filter.
Yes. So get back to so she was giving outdated information about.
Well,
the
I'm
protection
judging the
allowance.
information she gave
Okay.
based on the fact that I know where the asset threshold allowance has been year after year after year. So it's lowering and lowering and lowering. So I don't know anyone who's going to have that $50,000 asset threshold allowance at this point. The other thing,
And again, this is just if you're just joining us, we're doing college financial aid night fact check.
Correct.
And this is done, we're picking on our own district, but we don't mean to be because
No.
we hear this stuff.
No, she actually
and
was
crazier.
fine.
Yeah, okay, you liked her actually, but we hear this at all districts, all sorts of crazy stuff. I had one more thing to share also that after you get to your list, I heard this last year. So all right, go ahead.
Okay.
What else?
Asset threshold amount.
So another thing that I had heard
Tell us.
while Pearl's looking through her list, I think you covered everything. Is that
Okay.
last year I was doing a presentation and a family told me that a representative from Adelphi came to their school and told them a bunch of things, and the one that I remember that is totally just wrong is that Adelphi, which also takes the FAFSA form only, will look at your retirement accounts and penalize you for how much you have saved in retirement. When in fact, that is false, because on the actual instructions of the FAFSA that correspond to the question, what's the net value or the net worth of your investments, it says in plain English, do not include your retirement accounts, including, I'm sort of summarizing here, IRAs, 401ks, 457, all that type of stuff.
Right.
So a lot of parents, this gentleman was telling me last year, a lot of parents left that meeting, it might have been in Levittown or somewhere, left that meeting thinking, oh my God, we're never going to qualify for anything because we have $500,000
Right.
in retirement accounts, when in reality, that's not part of the equation, and they may have, if they didn't file, they may have shot themselves in the foot based on this false
Absolutely.
information. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? I just want to acknowledge everyone. Ooh. I almost made this joke. Francis, check.
Check
Fran.
in.
Because, what this is? Fact check. Fran, I almost texted you earlier, but I figured how many times can I make the same joke? Well, here I am doing it on the interwebs right now. So this is college financial aid fact checking that we did based on Pearl's undercover mission last night into our own district's college night.
Right. I'm going to add another
Okay.
thing, because I know that this is what everyone is concerned with. I think a lot of people went there hoping to know how could they optimize their financial aid eligibility. A financial aid office, well, this one at least didn't, and I don't really see where any other who is employed by a school, a business,
Yeah.
who there is a certain amount of money that they're intended to give away each year, but they certainly, it's like calling up the IRS, hey, can you find me some loopholes and tell me the best way to pay low,
So are you
to no taxes,
Are you
like that
implying-
other guy?
Are you implying that colleges are businesses?
No, I'm saying it
Oh,
right out there.
It was subtle. So
Yeah.
I guess an employee of that business, it may not be the best career move
Maybe
for
not.
them to talk about how to get more money out of them.
Right, and so too, she was not detail oriented in letting everyone know. Like, for example, she just said, "Yeah, just take money out of your kid's name," and So that might be true, but if you have money, let's say a healthy amount put in a 529, for example, and the penalty of removing that money is going to cost you more than maybe what you stand to gain in financial aid eligibility because of some other factor that this financial aid officer
Good
is not in
point.
front of, like whether you make no money or a ton of money, and your income's so high that it doesn't even matter what you do, you should not incur any penalty and you should leave that 529. It depends on your particular situation.
Okay, may I just rephrase that? Just because you said you were ranting.
Because I do it in rant and you
No,
do
no,
it
no,
in
it
brief.
was-
No. Hey,
Hey,
forest, trees,
rant
get it,
away.
leaves.
It's fine. But when you I forgot about this. When you told me this at 5 a.m. when
Yeah.
we had our
Coffee talk
our wrap up.
Yeah.
Rant/wrap up.
over coffee.
Yes. I had a cappuccino. We have a great cappuccino maker. Anyway, what you'd pointed out was that she gave accurate information in a vacuum, which is that, move all the money out of your kids' names.
Right.
But the reality is that if you, and there's no income ceiling or something, but if you make $1 million a year and you have $200,000 saved for your child, and you go to a presentation like Pearl infiltrated last night, okay, and you take everything at face value, and you were to implement everything that was said, which I guess most people won't do that, and you went home and you took the $200,000 out of your 529 and you paid all sorts of penalties, tax penalties, you get to recapture deductions that you take and all that because she told you at College Financial Aid to do this.
Do this.
Right. All that would happen would be that you still wouldn't qualify for need-based aid and you'd be poorer because you paid all these fees and taxes on it.
And
so
that's the vacation
that's the
you
dumbest
could
thing
have
of
had.
all. You saved the best for
those are your Christmas presents.
You saved the best for last. That was probably the dumbest thing. In my opinion.
Just a tad simplistic. Like it's just not can't be simplified just that way.
Yep.
And then the other thing I would point out is, when we were talking before, we said there's an asset threshold allowance amount for parents. That is not true for kids. They are penalized. Their assets are penalized from $1.
Okay. All right. So we got at least one question here, and I think we got others. I'm not sure I can see them all. But so Roseanne Eastman has a question about an employer profit sharing account. Is that looked as retirement income? I think, Roseanne, you're asking about retirement asset because it's not income until the money comes out of it.
Right.
So what's the answer?
So it is not considered an asset for the FAFSA or anywhere. It only should be listed under your retirement assets, the aggregate value that you from a most recent statement that you've received. However, the contributions that you made to that plan or were made on your behalf as deferred compensation to that plan in 2015, for example, then you would indicate that under the untaxed income portion of parent income. And it is, unfortunately, while it's untaxed for income tax purposes, it is included in the financial aid formulas in determining your eligibility.
Okay, so
they add it back in.
You gave both sides of the answer here. So as an asset, entirely exempt.
Yes.
Contributions to it, if you are making them, not your employer, if you are making them, those are considered income. So in other words, if your income is $150,000, but you're contributing $10,000 to your employer's plan, your income is now $140,000 on your tax return only, but for financial aid purposes, it's $150,000.
Yes.
Okay. So I think that's right.
That was the point.
That was the point. Okay, good. All right. So I think we should shut up now. I want to say goodbye to everyone. Thanks a lot for liking, commenting, and sharing with us.
See ya. Did you have that up in Massachusetts?
What is that?
Paula and I forgot the other one's name. The Magic Garden? No. See ya.
I had restricted television, so I'm not sure.
All right.
Pearl was brought up.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Pearl was brought up by a team of television programs and housekeepers, and I read a lot. So on that note, okay, just one thing to quickly promote. We're doing a much more detailed version of college, the stuff that you wish you had heard at your college financial aid night. That is coming up this Thursday night, 7 p.m. You can register at cs4l.tv, College Success for Less, cs4l.tv. I will post that here, and that is going to be sort of a deep dive last minute because the financial aid forms come out October 1st. So this is
That's our big date this Saturday.
Okay, so that'll be really the last opportunity you have to learn about what you can do to maximize your eligibility and avoid all kinds of deadly money losing traps. And we're going to be also offering our financial aid forms prep services at a slight discount. We're going to be running that special on Thursday night also. After we talk through who can benefit from it and who can't, and some other things. So that's at cs4l.tv, collegesuccessforless.tv. And I think this is a good show. So I appreciate everyone for tuning in and for liking, commenting, and sharing. Pearl, do you have any closing comments before I sign us off here on Facebook?
No. Thanks for listening.
All right. Well, thanks for going in depth and undercover. You're like, who are the undercover reporters? Like Woodward. She's like the Woodward and Bernstein of College Financial Aid Night.
Both wrapped up into one.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. On that note, I'm Andy Lockwood. That's Pearl Lockwood. We're signing off. Thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.